Thank you for joining us for our discussion about the big elephant that is in the room, that has been in the room for quite a while. We're going to be tying together a number of dynamics related to history. We're going to be looking at some considerations related to the social and legal implications of the film Hidden Colors. Many people have seen this film. Many people have taken quite a bit away from the film. But rarely do we have conversations about the implications of the research findings in the film. And so, first of all, we're going to be asking the question of the implications for this alternate history wherein darker brown people were on the thrones in Europe in ancient times. And also the implications for those individuals being on the throne during the time that was known as the transatlantic slave period. And also the implications of these entities being on the throne on the west coast of Africa also. And finally, what are the implications for the assertion that these same monarchs were comprised of what are known as the northern tribe? So the 10 tribes of Jacob, with the other 2 or 3, depending on how you're counting, on the west coast of Africa. And so we're going to be asking questions about the implications for all of this. And so we'll start off with this Holy Roman Empire dynamic. There was apparently, according to emerging history, a heavy presence of darker brown individuals in the Holy Roman Empire. In fact, apparently running the Holy Roman Empire. And by extension, running the transatlantic slave trade, essentially. And so what are the implications for all of this? What are the implications for having darker brown Europeans being the ones, sort of the ringleaders of the transatlantic slave trade, when the traditional narrative has been something other than that? There's also the assertion that the monarchs and the collectives spanning much of Europe during this same time period, that they were the descendants of Jacob, and very specifically the tribes such as Asher, Dan, Ephraim, Gad, Issachar, Manasseh, Naphtali, Reuben, Simeon, and Zebulon. Now, what's noteworthy is that some individuals place Gad in America and then Reuben in the Americas. But generally speaking, this is an assertion that has been made, and this assertion has been made irrespective of skin color or phenotype. So you have individuals that span the spectrum making this assertion about this identity, and also identifying themselves as being a part of this particular collective. And going along with the 12 tribes, 10 tribes paradigm, there's an assertion that King James served as a representative of the biblical Jacob, hence the Iacobus Rex. According to the narratives, the transatlantic slave trade started with respect to Europe, Africa, and America, started in the 1500s. And with respect to England, the person who was on the throne when things really got started would have been Queen Elizabeth I, followed by King James. And this is a very interesting depiction here where you have an individual who apparently has an afro with short hair, but also what appears to be albinism. And so the individual has short, sort of blondish, reddish hair, and then also what looks like pigment albinism in terms of the skin color. But you also notice that Habsburg phenotype when you look from the side, and you see this Habsburg phenotype throughout successive generations. And if you look to the left, you see King Philip not only with the tightly coiled hair, but also that Habsburg phenotype. And looking at this depiction of Hefan, you also see this European presence on the west coast of Africa. And in researching his name, it's noteworthy that this name appears to be a Germanic sort of name. It's not a name that is primarily found in Africa. It looks like not only did his throne, his crown, and his scepter come from Europe, but his name appears to have also come from Europe. And so let's think about this. There's another assertion that on the west coast of Africa, the remaining sons of Jacob, they were controlling that. And so there's the assertion that the tribe of Benjamin, the tribe of Judah, and the tribe of Levi were on the west coast of Africa. Of course, when you look at the places that we are talking about, these are the places that were instrumental in the transatlantic slave trade. And so what's being asserted is that not only do you have these brown monarchs in Europe running the transatlantic slave trade, you have, according to some assertions now, that it was actually Jacob, or what you would call Israel, running the transatlantic slave trade, whether you're talking about in Europe or whether you're talking about the west coast of Africa. And people make these assertions about the identities of these people without carrying it all the way through to the logical conclusion of the individuals who are identifying themselves as being victimized by the transatlantic slave trade are also identifying as the individuals or the collectives that were running the transatlantic slave trade. And so essentially what is being asserted by having all of these identities asserted is that Jacob ran the transatlantic slave trade. This Jacob narrative also situates the people of Dahomey as what would be known as the Levites. And so this would be the priest class. Many individuals might not understand that that's what they are asserting, but as soon as they are asserting that essentially the fawn are the Levites, then by extension they are indicating that the Dahomey, including the Dahomey Amazons, are the tribe of Levi. And so that collective known as Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, they are asserting that those are the entities, for the most part, that ran the transatlantic slave trade from that west coast of Africa. Also, according to the narrative, there is this individual known as Sir John Hawkins, who is instrumental in sort of kickstarting the transatlantic slave trade that included England. And so this individual was tied up with Spain and Germany, the Holy Roman Empire, essentially, and also was the person who sailed that ship known as Jesus of Lubeck. And notably, that place known as Lubeck is in Germany. And so it's not in England, even though the ship was related to England. This person, Sir John Hawkins, was also provided with a coat of arms. And this is the coat of arms. And it's noted that the coat of arms includes a demi-moor up at the top that is bound. Most people are aware that the Europeans also built castles along the west coast of Africa. The castles served many purposes. But what's important to keep in mind with respect to this particular discussion is that these castles were built during a time period when the monarchs of Europe, according to the narrative, were these darker brown individuals. And the monarchs on the west coast of Africa, who were intertwined with the monarchs in Europe, they were also darker brown. But the individuals orchestrating this dynamic appear to be, by and large, darker brown, and also based upon what took place with the conversos in terms of religion, the individuals appear to be identifying as collectively Catholic, in some instances Protestant, Jewish, and Muslim. And here we see that ship, the Jesus of Lubeck ship, that was instrumental in sort of kickstarting the transatlantic slave trade, incorporating England into this dynamic. This is the ship, and you can see the crosses on the ship. It is a challenge to reconcile the older narratives with these emerging alternate histories. But one thing is certain is that there are implications for these new emerging histories, all of these artifacts that are popping up all over the place. There are legal implications, there are social implications. And there are also implications not only for what took place with the transatlantic slave trade, but there are implications for what took place during colonization. Who was actually doing the colonizing? And again, what are the implications for all of that? Remember, knowledge is power. Take care. See you soon.